We pretty much live our entire lives on the internet, right? It feels so incredibly new, like this massive revolution. But what if I told you that the basic idea, a giant global network that moves money, power, and secrets at lightning speed, isn't a modern invention at all? Turns out this story is way, way older than you think.
Look, I know it's a wild question, but when you really start to dig into how ancient empires were actually built, and more importantly, how they fell, you find these crazy parallels to our own connected world. Yeah, the technology was different, no fiber optics obviously, but the fundamental ideas, they were exactly the same.
I mean, we all get this, right? It's just a fundamental truth of our time. The person or the company or the country with the best information and the ability to get it the fastest almost always wins. It moves markets, it changes minds, it basically defines our reality.
And that's the secret that's been hiding in plain sight throughout all of human history. Long before we had satellites and servers, the struggle to control the flow of information was the single biggest factor in building up and in tearing down entire civilizations.
So our story really kicks off with a huge problem that ancient rulers had. Their empires were just getting too big to handle. I mean, how do you give an order, or collect your taxes, or get an urgent intelligence report from 1,000 miles away before it's completely useless? The answer wasn't just about having a bigger army. It was about being faster.
Just look at the Roman Empire. They built a staggering 250,000 miles of these incredible engineered stone roads. Now, we usually picture legions marching down them, but their real strategic purpose, the reason they were so crucial, was something else entirely. These roads were literally highways for data.
The Romans built this amazing system called the Cursus Publicus. You can think of it as the official state-run postal service and intelligence network all rolled into one. Just imagine, relay stations set up every few miles, always staffed with fresh horses and dedicated couriers, ready to ride at a moment's notice. A sealed scroll could leave Rome and get to the northern edge of the empire in just a matter of days. This system was the engine that ran the whole empire.
And the Romans weren't even the first to come up with this. They got the idea from even earlier systems, like the super famous Persian Royal Road. The historian Herodotus wrote about how unbelievably efficient it was, with a line that, well, it sounds just like the motto for a modern postal service, doesn't it? The key thing to get here is that this idea of a high-speed information network, it was a weapon of the state long before Rome came along and perfected it.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because what happened next was this totally unexpected side effect that literally changed the world's economy. Once this super-fast network was built for the government and the military, somebody else realized they could use it too. Merchants.
And this caused a revolutionary change in how people thought about wealth. See, the old way to get rich was to physically move valuable stuff, gold, silk, whatever, from point A to point B. But the new way, it was so much more powerful. You didn't have to move the gold. All you had to do was move information about the gold faster than your competition.
And right there, that's the birth of finance as we know it. All of a sudden, the price of grain in Egypt could affect the markets in Rome almost in real time. Bankers realized, wait a minute, we don't have to ship heavy chests of gold anymore. They could just send a letter of credit, basically a paper promise, that would be honored hundreds of miles away. Financial intelligence itself became the most valuable commodity there was.
And this idea just got stronger and stronger over time. Let's fast forward a few hundred years to a city like Venice. Venice didn't really produce a lot of its own stuff. So how in the world did it become one of the wealthiest places on Earth? Simple. It controlled the information. It was the central hub for news, for prices, for shipping routes between Europe and the East. It was basically the Google of its day, organizing the world's information and getting fabulously rich by doing it.
Okay, but here's the twist. These massive, powerful networks, from the Roman roads to the Silk Road, they all had a flip side. As they got bigger and more important, they also became incredibly fragile. And they had a dark side that frankly sounds eerily familiar today.
See, any open network is going to get exploited. Spies can just pretend to be merchants using the same roads to feed intelligence to Rome's enemies. Criminals use the same routes to move illegal goods. And, most terrifying of all, invisible threats move just as fast as the information did. The Black Death didn't spread randomly. It literally surfed along the established trade routes with deadly, deadly precision.
It's a chilling thought, but as the source material puts it, information and death moved together. The very same pathways that brought wealth and knowledge also brought absolute devastation. This was just the built-in risk of having a connected world. And the system itself was just so vulnerable. I mean, think about it.
All it took was one war to cut off a key route, and entire markets that depended on that information would just crash. So when the Roman Empire finally did fall, its roads fell apart. The great network shattered, and Europe was plunged into what was basically an information blackout that lasted for centuries.
So what does all this teach us? What's the big takeaway from this 2,000-year-old story? Well, it's a really powerful warning about where power actually comes from, and maybe more importantly, how fast it can all disappear.
If you remember one thing from all this, make it this. True, lasting power has never really been about having the biggest army or the most gold. It has always been about controlling the network, the infrastructure that moves the information.
You know, this is the part that history books sometimes get backwards. Empires like Rome or Persia, they didn't just get powerful and then decide to build great communication systems. No, it was the other way around. They built a superior information network first, and that advantage is what allowed them to dominate everyone else.
And that, of course, brings us right back to our world today. We are living inside the largest, fastest, most unbelievably complex information network ever created. It connects billions of us, moves trillions of dollars every single day. But what history warns us is that any system that becomes this critical also becomes a massive target. It becomes inherently fragile.
The ancient internet of roads and messengers didn't just fade away. It fell apart because control over the network was lost. And that leaves us with a pretty big question for our own time. It's not about building a faster network. The real question is, who controls it now? And what happens when that control begins?